You step barefoot onto the burning dust outside Aketon. There is no gate, no guardian. Only a wide path of crushed limestone stretching between symmetrical pylons, leading to nothing. No sphinx, no sentinel idol, no chiseled warning in hieroglyph. The road greets you with absence, and still you walk. The sun stares down round, indifferent and full. There is no shade, no column casts protection. Your skin drinks heat like a commandment. Welcome to the city of Atan. The people here speak softly, not out of reverence but exhaustion. They wake with the dawn not to offer prayers, but to align. They face east, all of them, kneeling in rows with arms open wide, not toward a statue, not toward a name, but toward the light itself. He is not carved. One woman whispers, he is not imagined. He simply is. And that is the first sin. You move among their dwellings, simple, bleached walls with no divine graffiti. No bird-headed deities dancing in red and turquoise. The children are taught only one name, Aten. They do not know the stories of Set, Osiris, or Thoth. Their world has been scrubbed of gods until only one remains, but not as a father, not as a voice, as a disk, a radiant circle, an eye without a pupil. And in that blinding simplicity lies a terrible complexity. Akhenaten, born Amenhotep IV, did not abolish the gods in rage. He did it with elegance. In the year 5 of his reign, he erased them with ink, not fire. He issued the decree of the Sun Temple, redirecting divine offerings away from Ammon, away from the pantheon, and toward the Aten, the visible sun itself. Not a symbol of divinity, divinity incarnate. There be no more intermediaries. And thus, for the first time in known memory, a monotheism emerged. You have arrived at the very moment when plurality was forbidden. Inside the great temple of the Aten, you see no columns, no darkness, no enclosed sanctuary, just open air. Stone platforms exposed to the sky, where the king alone offers food and incense to the radiant disk. No one else may approach, no one else may speak to the sun, because only the pharaoh is permitted to hear the voice of Aten. And yet, you feel it. A whisper like pressure in your chest. Not speech, not song. Something like pulse, as if a frequency surrounds you, low and droning. The silence of this place is not quiet, is loaded, tense, a theological vacuum sucking the breath from older prayers. Even the wind seems altered. There's a story, hidden in the records of a Theban priest, smuggled out before his execution. The sun over Akhetaten never moves exactly the same way as it does elsewhere in Egypt. It lingers longer, shines harder. Once, on the summer solstice, it casts no shadows for nearly half an hour. That should be impossible, should be. But Akhetaten defies shoulds, and here in the absence of idols, a new form of belief grows like mold. Ritual through negation. You overhear a rite whispered from mother to daughter. At midday, if you close your eyes and tilt your face to the disk, you can ask it to erase your sins, not by forgiveness, but by forgetting. He does not judge, the girl says, repeating her mother's chant. He consumes memory. Somewhere under the courtyard flagstones. The original temple plans lie etched into lead sheets, never meant for human eyes. They contain no god names, only measures of light. The forbidden ritual. It is said that on the 7th day of the 7th lunar month, if you mark a circle of sand with no entrance and stand within at the exact center at noon, Aten will burn your name out of the book of judgment. But only if you never leave the circle again. No one knows who first performed it. But there's a black stain, 10 paces wide, in the courtyard. No flowers grow there, no insects hum. It's the unsolved mystery. Scholars still argue, was Akhenaten a proto-monotheist inspired by divine epiphany? Or a politically motivated iconoclast seeking to destroy the Theban priesthood's power? No tablets explain the why, only the what. And the what is silence. You pass by a scribe scratching notations into a broken ostracon. He wears no amulet, no ring. His body smells of limestone and prayerless sleep. You glance over his shoulder. The hieroglyph he draws has no phonetic meaning. It's a circle flat, unadorned and surrounded by 7 short lines radiating out. You ask softly what it is. He whispers back, not a name, a warning, and you feel it then, not awe, not worship, but dread. Because for the first time in your memory, there is a God who does not need to be remembered. And that makes him infinitely dangerous. Like this story, if the light has touched you, comment if your name is already fading. Subscribe if you no longer cast a shadow. This is the story of Aten, the one god that failed. Now let's get started with today's story. You enter the palace not through doors but through thresholds of light. There are no carved lions here, no towering gods with jackal heads or feathered scales. Only wide-open walls designed to let Aten's rays strike every corner of the court. The architecture is heretical by design, meant to reject enclosure, to reject mystery, and yet mystery seeps through. Akhenaten stands not on a dais but in the sun, uncovered, his robes pale and translucent. His limbs long like reeds swaying in the Nile's fevered breath. He does not look like a ruler. He looks like a fever dream, and in truth he is. They say he began to change after a dream-o-vision received, not at night, but in the merciless light of noon. He collapsed mid-ceremony at Karnak, murmuring a single word over and over. WD. Wholeness. Radiance. Order. But when he arose, he was no longer Amenhotep. He was Akhenaten, effective for the Aten. That is not a name, that is a transformation. The courtiers began to kneel when he walked past, not out of obedience, but out of confusion. For when he spoke now, his words were not commands, they were dictations. His voice, thin and brittle, cracked like parchment butt. It came from the center of his chest, not his throat. He recognized the cadence, the hollowed echo of the possessed. The Prophet King writes his revelations with trembling fingers, not ink. He carves them directly into stone with tools of electrum. Even his stonemasons are forbidden from touching certain glyphs that can only be formed in solitude by his hand under direct sunlight. You read one? It says all gods are shadows of the disk. The disk is no shadow. This is not metaphor. It is law. And law, in Akhenaten, is the only liturgy. You follow him into the inner sanctum of the open-air court, where offerings are arranged in precise geometries. No altar bleeds, no image is adored. Only the ray hands the icon of Aten, a simple sun with long rays ending in tiny fingers, touching the face of the king and queen. Always the same scene, always them alone. That is another change. No priests intercede. No supplicants speak aloud. The royal family becomes the priesthood. The temple is a court. The court is a stage upon which divinity plays only one role. You approach one of the queen's chambers, Nefertiti's chamber. The walls shimmer with pigment still wet from last week. Esrite applied an open sun, so Aten might see his own reflection. You tilt your head. There is a difference in her depiction. Unlike other queens, she is not subordinate. She stands as equal, hands raised to the light, the same rays touching her brow. Some panels show her feeding Aten, directly bypassing Akhenaten entirely. And then, one mosaic tucked behind a curtained arch shows her face splintered, melting into gold, as if the light has unmade her and she is smiling, too widely. The forbidden belief. Among Nefertiti's personal servants, a hidden verse circulates. Aten lives not above, but inside the flesh of the king and queen. This belief is spoken only in the dark, but its logic is dangerous. If Aten lives within them, then they are not prophets. They are vessels, or parasites. The obscure event. On the 10th year of Akhenaten's reign, a scribe from Heliopolis recorded a lunar eclipse. But this should not have been possible. Eclipses were never tracked in this system. And yet during that eclipse, Akhenaten reportedly entered the temple and remained for 77 heartbeats in complete stillness. He emerged humming, his eyes pale, his mouth red with blood not his own. No one knows whose. The unsolved mystery. To this day, scholars debate Akhenaten's body. Statues and reliefs show him with a swollen belly, elongated skull, feminine hips, and breast-like chest. Was this stylized art? A medical condition? Or deliberate iconography meant to express a duality, both father and mother of worship? The medical scrolls burned after his death suggest there were physicians who discovered what should not be named. You kneel in his shadow now, and it stretches impossibly long, thinner than it should be, reaching in directions no sun supports. He does not speak to you. Instead, he gazes up, his lips parted, whispering syllables that do not belong to this tongue. You catch only 3 words: Sa, Haku, Re, perception, magic, sun. And in that instant, your knees ache, your vision dims. You are no longer sure if you are inside a city or a dream, inside a palace or a psalm. Because here, under the disk of Aten, even reality is measured by how much it conforms to light, not truth, light. And you remember an ancient saying, now banned across the Nile: even shadows are loyal to something. In Akhenaten, they are loyal to nothing. You wander farther from the light. Beyond the white walls of Akhenaten, where the stone is smooth and the geometry speaks of clarity, lie the old ruins choked in sand, half swallowed by time and punishment. Here, among the silent temples of a god no longer named, you feel the grief of erasure. You enter a sanctuary once devoted to Amun-Ra, but his name has been struck out, every inscription meticulously chiseled away, the contours of his crown disfigured, his face replaced by a blank. Not removed in anger, but in dread, not desecrated, but dismantled. As if to even leave the ghost of his memory would be heresy against light. This is not just iconoclasm, it is exorcism. The floors are littered with broken Ashabdatini servants meant for the afterlife, now dismembered. You kneel and pick up a shard. It bears a faint, almost forgotten cartouche. Mutemwia, it's mother of Amenhotep III. Her name is forbidden now. The silence here is oppressive. No song echoes. No birds nest in the crumbling eaves. The walls absorb sound. You try to hum a prayer, but the air refuses to carry it. The gods have been vacuumed out. And yet, something stirs beneath the dust. You find a sealed stone door, its lintel marked by a crude glyphini with no iris, not Horus, not Wadjet. It's one watches without meaning, without mercy. You press your ear to it. There's a chant inside, but it is not in Egyptian, but not in any tongue, you know. It rises and falls like breath through hollow reeds, a language of air itself. You dig? The buried chamber takes hours to uncover. The dust makes you cough blood. And at last you descend the stone steps, blind, hand on the wall. It is dark, deliciously dark. No sun here. And in that darkness, you find them. 3 priests, kneeling. Dead for years, perhaps decades. Their robes once white, now salt-stained. In front of them lie broken statues of Ammon, Osiris, Hathor, fractured at the neck. Around them, written in soot, is a circle of words. We die so that memory may live. They were not hiding from Aten. They were praying against him. The forbidden ritual, a tale passed down in fragmented Demotic script, tells of the Last Supper of the Pantheon, a rite conducted in silence beneath the old Karnak sanctuary. The priests would chant all the names of the gods backward, raising their power, and seal the names in clay jars buried beneath the floor. To call them forward again, one must break a jar on a new moon and spill its dust into running water. But doing so, it is said, cuts a year from your life. The obscure event. A letter from a scribe in Memphis tells of a traveler who visited Akhenaten and returned blind not physically, but spiritually. He could no longer pray. No word would leave his mouth in the presence of idols. He had seen the sun that hears no voice, and his soul had gone deaf. The unsolved mystery under the oldest layers of Akhenaten. Archaeologists found no remnants of past temples. Like all other Egyptian cities, which layered sacred spaces atop each other, it is as if the city was built not over something, but over nothing, a deliberately chosen blank, as though the land itself had been ritually erased. You rise from the chamber. Light stings your eyes like punishment. When you return to the city, you notice something unsettling. People no longer speak to each other in the street. They simply pass, silent, open-palmed, eyes lifted. You realize that the worship of Aten has no litany, no hail, no peace be upon, no blessed be. There is only one phrase permitted, Imhotep Aten, Impeace Aten. And even that is whispered rarely, as if words displease the disc. As if naming is a kind of betrayal, you walk into a small home near the edge of the city. On the back wall, behind a faded linen sheet, you find a single, secret relief, crudely etched with charcoal. It's an image of a crocodile. Sobek, he has not been forgotten, only hidden. The charcoal is smeared with fingerprints, as if touched nightly. You do not know who did this, but you sense they are near, watching, waiting for a night without moonlight, waiting for Aten to blink. You descend into the archive that was never meant to be kept. It lies beneath a house of scribes, cloaked in the anonymity of clay jars and dull reed scrolls. The keepers of Aten do not value history in the old sense. They record not events but alignments, positions of the sun at dawn, angles of shadow on white stone, days when no birds fly. They call it scripture, and in this arid silence, you find it. The great hymn to the Aten, a prayer to perfect, to mathematical. Each stanza, a mirror of the next. No metaphor, no birth of gods, no battles in the duat, just light. Light without face, name, or nuance. You read it aloud, and something shifts behind your eyes. You rise in perfection on the horizon of the sky. The air around you cools slightly, though the fire outside burns strong. You alone are the living God. Countless are your forms, though none know you're coming. A pressure in your chest, like hands pressing from the inside. The hymn is not worship. It is not even praise. It is geometry disguised as devotion. Each line follows a golden ratio. Every verse echoes a numerical harmony. Scholars would later realize centuries too late that the hymn maps not just the sun's movement, but a rhythm buried deep within the structure of matter itself, a harmonic code, divine algorithm. You look again at the reed scroll. The ink glistens unnaturally, still wet, though centuries old. You flip the scroll, expecting more. Instead, you find a single glyph burned into the fiber, dot drawn, but scorched. A circle. Within it, a mouthless face. The eye of Aten, not to be confused with Ra. This one watches, but never speaks. The forbidden ritual. Some whisper of the night recitation. If the great hymn is read backward under noonday sun, each syllable carefully reversed, the reader becomes translucent for one breath, a ghost in sunlight. But none survive a second attempt. Their bodies remain, their shadows do not. The obscure event, in the late years of Akhetaten's rule, a group of rebel priests from Thebes attempted to restore the old gods by inscribing their names into newly written psalms. But the ink turned to ash, not metaphorically, physically. Every letter burned away mid-writing. Some blamed the heat, others knew better. The unsolved mystery. Linguists and symbologists still cannot explain why the great hymn to the Aten, unlike any other Egyptian text, contains no determinatives, those essential symbols used to classify words. It's as if the hymn denies classification itself. It is not language. It is light masquerading as language. You feel unsteady now. Scroll still lies open before you. But something about the lines has changed, not the words, the spacing. The third verse now sits closer to the fifth. The seventh has become narrower. Your eyes follow an impossible path down left, then spiraling inward. The hymn is changing as you read it, and yet the ink does not move. You close your eyes and see the sun, not its shape, its pressure. It pulses in sync with your breath. A low, droning hum in your blood. You're not reading a prayer, you are being read by it. You drop the scroll. It lands perfectly flat, not a curl, not a crease, and you realize it was never meant to be handled by human hands. It was meant to be heard by the God himself. A message left for the disc in the geometry of worship. You exit the chamber. Outside, the sky is pale, almost silver, and every bird has vanished. Only the hum remains, a rhythm of sacred static, barely audible, like breath in the bones of stone. You stand at the edge of the eastern cliffs, where Akhetaten was meant to begin and end. No pylons mark the borders. No walls defended. Only steely boundary stones carved by royal hand. You run your fingers across one. The inscription reads, "The Aten himself chose this place for me. I shall not cross beyond it, neither shall you." For Akhenaten did not merely build a city, he sealed it into the stone. You walk the processional road, a white scar across the desert, wide and straight as judgment. The buildings beside it rise like mirages, smooth, flat-roofed, faceless. No towers, no corners for shade. Even homes are built to face the sun, like worshippers trapped mid-bow. The city reflects Otten's gaze in, nothing else. Every brick, every window, every step aligned with the sun's daily motion. The temples open to the east. Streets widen where the light lingers. Sacred geometry, not for humans, but for the god who watches from above. And you begin to see it. The city's a machine. No, not metaphorically, literally. A device of stone and sunlight designed not for living, but for aligning. Its plazas and stairs channel light like blood through veins. At solar noon, the central court becomes a blinding mirror, so bright it bleaches the faces of those who pass through it. No one stays there long, not even the guards. The houses of the elite surround the temple in concentric loops. But even here, decoration is scarce. Only the royal palace bears murals, and even those depict not battles or victories, but Otten's rays touching the royal family. Over and over, the same composition, repeated like obsession. And beyond those, nothing.
No necropolis.
No storage for grain, no tombs. You ask a local scribe where the dead are buried. He looks away. We do not speak of such things in the light. Search the archives. There are no death records in Akatan, no funerary rites, no texts about the duat, the journey of the soul. Wait. It's as if death itself has been omitted from this god's doctrine. And yet, one night you follow a shadow, a woman walking alone, her head covered, a clay jar in hand. She winds through the alleyways until she reaches a shallow cleft in the desert behind the workers' village. There, by a cracked rock, she kneels and pours milk into the sand. She whispers names that sound like prayers, but not to Aten. Old names, Torit, Base, Wepwet. She weeps, not loudly, just enough to wet the stones. You wait until she leaves. Then you dig. Your fingers strike clay and offering jar. Inside, a tiny figure carved in haste. The dwarf god Base, guardian of childbirth and thresholds. His eyes are smeared with coal. His smile is desperate. You look back at the city. Its perfect lines, its empty streets. Akatan is not built to endure. It's built to erase. The forbidden ritual. In the outer quarters, a handful of builders perform the rite of the vanishing house. At night, they sprinkle natron around a home's threshold and chant the city's founding verse backward. In the morning, the house is still there, but the records of who lived in it are gone. The census skips the line. The names do not return. The obscure event. A Babylonian envoy once sent to Akatan vanished after only 3 days. His journal was recovered, half-burned, containing a single phrase repeated 13 times. This place is not in time. The unsolved mystery. When Akhetan was rediscovered in modern times, no city had ever disappeared so thoroughly. It left no legacy, no descendants, no pilgrimage. Its location, once sacred, was abandoned within decades of its construction. Why did a pharaoh invest everything into a city meant to vanish? You step onto the royal road at sunset. The last rays of light fall in lines across your path, perfectly spaced, perfectly sharp. You walk forward, but your shadow does not. It stays behind. It doesn't even flinch. And you know deep in your blood that Akatan is watching. Not because it is holy, but because it was made to watch. Like a giant eye carved into the earth. And now, it has seen you. They wear no crowns, no leopard pelts, no staffs carved with a scepter. You don't recognize them as priests at first, not until you see how they move, not toward the sun, but around it. These are not the celebrants of Otten's surface rituals. These are his inner servants, the Void Court, whispered of, but never named aloud. Their robes are chalk white, faces hidden behind plain alabaster masks with no mouths. They do not speak. And yet their presence commands silence. You find them deep beneath the house of instruction. In chambers carved not with hieroglyphs, but with sequences of dots and lines no language, only pattern. These walls pulse with a silent rhythm. Cannot explain why it disturbs you, but it does. They do not sing, they intone numbers. Each day precisely at zenith, they gather around a polished obsidian disc inlaid into the floor. The surface is flawless, reflecting only the ceiling's sunhola shaft of light that falls directly onto it. The priests raise their hands, not in praise, but in calibration. They begin counting aloud. 1.13. 240-1.0. Then silence. A tone begins to hum from the disc, though no hand has touched it. Your skull vibrates softly. Your teeth ache. The sound contains no words, but you understand it in your stomach. This is not worship. This is synchronization. Aten is not a god of mercy. He is a god of order, a god of constance, a god who measures. And the Void Court ensures the cosmos remains measurable. The forbidden belief. The initiates of the Void Court believe that Aten is not a sun at all, but a lens. A being that focuses divine attention from something far older and more alien than creation itself. To worship Aten is to open yourself not to love, but to observation. The obscure event, a fractured steeler near the city's eastern cliffs, tells of a priest named Neziaman, who claimed to hear the Aten. Gosh. Voice not as light but as subtraction. Every day, something vanished from his memory. First his family, then his name, and finally the gods he once served. He was last seen walking toward the desert, barefoot, holding a copper disc to his ear. The unsolved mystery on the back wall of the Void Court's chamber is a symbol found nowhere else in Egypt, a series of nested circles, spiraling inward into nothing. It's not a spiral of growth, a spiral of collapse. Modern mathematicians studying the symbol found it resembles a fractalist, self-repeating pattern with no origin and no center. You try to speak to them? One of the priests tilts their mask toward you. It has no mouth. It's only a small hollow rimmed with gold where the lips should be. The priest raises a finger and draws a symbol in the air, a circle with two vertical lines crossing it, then slowly opens both palms toward the sun hole above. You mimic the gesture. Suddenly you see, not with your eyes. Your breath catches as your thoughts are pulled into a rigid rhythm. You feel as though your blood is being reorganized, your bones snapped into new proportions. For one brief moment, everything feels correct. Then the pain begins. Not sharp, not loud, but endless. You fall to your knees, gasping. The priest turns away. You are no longer of interest. You stagger from the chamber, blinking against the sun, blinds you more than before. The light is not gentle, it pierces. And every object casts its shadow, slightly wrong curved, when it should be straight, long where it should be squat. You cover your eyes, and behind your lids, you still see the fractal, still spiraling, still collapsing. They say she never blinked. Nefertiti, the beautiful one, has come. But she was more than beautiful. She was essential. In every relief, she is beside Akhenaten, face turned to Aten, receiving the sun's rays, as if she too were divine. But beneath the reverence, beneath the pigments still clinging stubbornly to cracked stone, there is something else. You enter the Queen's solar house. The ceiling is open to the sun. No roof only, a vast circular aperture above her bedchamber, where Aten may gaze upon her as she sleeps, or dreams. And the dreams, they are not hers alone. A diary carved in plaster, buried behind a false wall, reveals fragments of her descent. Nefertiti speaks not of visions, but of visitations. Not from Aten himself, but from the light that comes before speech, the kind that looks back, writes of a dream that returns night after night. She stands in the temple, alone. The sun above shrinks to a pinprick, then explodes not in flame but in soundless geometry. A ring of 12 faces, featureless, turns toward her. Then, nothing. And each morning she wakes bleeding from the eyes. Her physician calls it a divine symptom. Her servants say nothing. But they avoid her gaze, because she sees too much. Find the mirror. It lies hidden in the floor beneath her anointing, basin sealed under bronze and obsidian, wrapped in linen, marked with curses. It's not a mirror in the usual sense. It reflects no body, only light. And even that, only during eclipses. It is the eclipse mirror, said to be forged from desert glass, collected after a meteor strike in the western sands. The myths say it was polished by hand using ash from unburned. Sacrifices bodies left in sun until only their bones hummed. The frame bears no name, only an inscription. He who reflects Aten must not possess a face. You breathe over its surface. The mirror flickers, then sings, not aloud, not through air, but in mind. You see her then. Nefertiti standing at the top of a white ziggurat of impossible height, arms stretched to a starless sky. Her body bends unnaturally, haloed in radiance that distorts her outline. Her face is gone, replaced by a flat, burnished mask. The hands of Aten reach down from the heavens like many tendrils of gold, and yet she does not tremble. She opens her mouth, and light pours out. Then you awaken. You're still kneeling over the mirror. You do not remember falling asleep. But your fingers bleed slightly at the cuticles. You look to the walls. The murals have shifted. What was once a peaceful court scene now depicts ritual. Nefertiti standing alone before a ring of fire, eyes painted black, surrounded by kneeling children. One of them raises a hand but has no fingers. You blink. The image reverts. It's the forbidden ritual. It is believed that once, and only once, Nefertiti performed the eclipse mirror rite, a solitary act during a solar darkening. She gazed into the disk for the full duration, unmoving. When it passed, her irises had turned the color of gold leaf, and she no longer spoke. From that day on, she issued commands through scribes only. The obscure event. On a fragment of papyrus found behind a wall in the royal archive, a note appears to have been scrawled in haste by a temple guard. The queen prays, facing away from the sun now. The line is repeated twice, and beneath it, in red ink, she is still heard. It's the unsolved mystery. No mummy or definitive tomb of Nefertiti has ever been found. Theories abound. She died in disgrace. She ruled under a different name. She was buried in secret. But one document, dismissed by scholars, refers to her simply as the Ascended, as if she did not die, but changed. You leave the solar house in silence. The sun is high now, but it no longer comforts. It interrogates. You feel exposed. Not because you are bare, but because you are known. The light no longer falls upon you. It studies you. You hear it first in whispers, through couriers, stammering scribes, and broken servants returning from the innermost sanctum. The pharaoh is not as he was. He no longer appears in public. His silhouette behind linen screens moves with an unnatural fluidity, like a creature shedding form. You descend into the inner palace, past the alabaster halls, down through courtyards to clean, too symmetrical. The sun stalks every corridor. No shadow survives, and yet chill follows you. A physician is summoned to speak with you. He arrives slowly, head bowed, skin grayed with age and fear. His hands tremble as he opens a scroll he never meant to carry. It is a record, one of the only that survives of the pharaoh's transfiguration. His ribs no longer close. They curve outward. His spine bends under a pressure we cannot measure. He bleeds little when cut. The wounds refuse to decay. His skull lengthens with every moon. You think it a metaphor until you see the sketches. They are not grotesque. They are precise, measured, almost reverent. You are shown the bedchamber. But the king is not there. Only his scent. Incense mixed with copper and something like sun-baked milk. The servants do not enter. They slide trays through gaps in the walls, their eyes averted. One mutters a heresy under her breath as she walks away. He is no longer alone in his body. You find his footprints in the dust, each longer than the last, each lighter as though his weight is leaving him. You open a sealed chest. Inside, bones, long, pale, bird-like, wrapped in linen, marked with Aten's rays, and a single word scrawled in ash. Unfinished. Not animal, not entirely human. And there is a scroll, no title, no date, simply inscribed. The Lord of the Horizon dreams backward. You retreat to the medical chambers. There, in a cracked alabaster basin, you discover a sliver of fingernail, twice the length of yours, curved unnaturally, hard as ivory. No one will touch it. The scribes say it belongs to the late king, but the king is not dead. He is simply retreating. Each day, Akhenaten appears further from the sun. He no longer performs rites. The queen stands alone at the altars. And the city, once built on the premise of the open sky, begins to look inward. The people begin wearing hoods. They do not say why. You ask a child what the Aten looks like. She says a face without skin, and then laughs, but her eyes do not. The forbidden ritual. It is said that, in the final days of the king's transformation, the Void Court performed the rite of hollowing, a process of separating one's bones from their inherited shape. Conducted under midday sun and without anesthetic, it was believed to prepare the body to house a new geometry of being.
Oh, yes.
No one who underwent it was ever seen again, except the king. The obscure event, in a sandstone block found buried beneath the palace kitchens. A mason's accidental carving shows a humanoid figure bending backward, arms elongated, with solar rays not touching but piercing the body. Beneath it is one word, Nesek, to dissolve. The unsolved mystery. To this day, examination of the Amarna period royal remains yields anomalies. Elongated skulls, unusual rib cages, missing kneecaps. Geneticists cannot explain the frequency of deformities. Some call it a dynasty-wide illness. Others suspect an intentional modification, biological submission to divine form. You leave the palace, shaken. The sun still shines, but something beneath the surface no longer fits. The king is changing. The city pretends not to notice. You reach the gates, look behind you, and you swear. You see him standing in the archway, taller than before, thinner, almost translucent. His eyes reflect no light, only you. You return to the Temple of the Aten, once proud in its whiteness, open to the sun, unadorned, unyielding. But now the paint is cracking, the walls sweat salt. Something inside is failing, resisting. You descend a staircase no one tells you exists. No guard stops you. They do not see you anymore. You've lingered too long. You no longer cast the same kind of shadow. The chamber beneath the temple is small, windowless, circular, lined with sun-dried brick that flakes when touched. There is no altar, no incense, only a single wall panel. Once plain, now scorched. Not burned by accident, burned deliberately. You run your hands along it. The soot stains your skin, but the outline remains a section of the great hymn, its final stanza. Unlike the rest of the hymn which praises the Aten's perfection, this verse wavers. You devour the souls of night. Your rays dissolve the names of the forgotten. Your heat makes judgment unnecessary. And beneath that, a line crossed through violently in red ink. You burn what remembers you. There are fingerprints in the soot, as though someone tried to wipe the words away long after the fire had cooled. But the ash clings. The glyphs refuse to die. You sit on the cold floor, unable to stop reading. The verse loops in your head. You hear it behind your eyes. And then something responds. The heat increases. It's not in the room, but in your blood. You feel as though your spine has become a wick. You sweat salt. You blink. And the shadows on the walls become longer than the room allows. A mural emerges from beneath the soot, hidden, painted beneath the hymn. Figure tall, impossible to measure, no face. Its arms extend in every direction, branching into rays, each ending in a human eye. Round its feet, figures burn not from fire, but from forgetting. Their forms soften. Their outlines blur. They vanish as you watch. The forbidden ritual, known only from a fragment preserved in a collapsed tomb. The rite of the last verse was said to be uttered once only, once by Akhenaten himself. And he believed the Aten was speaking too much. The rite invokes silence by fire, purging memory itself. To perform it, the hymn must be sung wrong, intentionally. But doing so sets the words ablaze. Literally, the obscure event. A record from the priest Merir describes a day when the sun did not rise. The city panicked. The hymn was chanted non-stop for hours until the king emerged, silent and pointed to the sky. The disc reappeared instantly. Scholars believe it was a sandstorm, but the account insists no cloud and no veil, only absence. The unsolved mystery in the Library of Alexandria. Long after Akkadian was abandoned, a copy of the great hymn was catalogued, but its final lines differed. They referenced a shadow beneath the disc and a mouth with no language. The scroll was destroyed in a later fire. No other copies have since matched it. You touch the burnt stanza again. Your fingertips blacken. But underneath, the stone is warm. The wall pulses. Once, twice, then still, as though it heard you. And now, something has been activated. You flee the chamber, stumbling into the sunlight. But the light feels wrong, sharper, hungrier. The people in the plaza are silent, heads turned unnaturally toward the disc. You whisper to one, asking what they see. They do not blink, they do not speak. But their mouth is open, as if mid-hymn. And yet, no sound emerges, just heat. You step back. The ground beneath your sandals sizzles. And for the first time since your arrival, you understand the Aten does not shine, he consumes. The sun rose, and people died. Not in war, not by dagger or flood, but by presence. A slow unraveling, quiet and invisible. It began in the workers' quarter. A child collapsed while staring at the disc too long. His skin blistered where no flame had touched. Then his mother followed, then her sister. They buried them quickly without the rites. There were no rites left to give. You arrive at the quarter under full sun. The streets smell wrong, like papyrus soaked in vinegar, like linen burned without flame. The city speaks of illness, but there are no signs. No swelling, no pus. Only ... diminishment. They fade. Weight leaves their limbs. Color drains from their lips. Their names become hard to remember. You ask a man about his wife, and he squints as if the word is new to him. My? What? You hold your breath as you pass a line of doorways marked with a single glyph. An empty cartouche. Name erased. Existence nullified. No one knocks on those doors anymore. And yet the city continues. Rituals do not stop. The hymn is still sung more softly now, almost uncertain. Fewer voices, longer pauses. The sun shines, but the joy is gone out of its reflection. In the royal granaries, guards complain of spoilage. Grain rots within days. Wine turns to vinegar overnight. Rats no longer enter. Even they refuse the blessing. You find a medical papyrus in a trash pit, crumpled, torn, still legible in places. It lists symptoms: weakness of memory, collapse of the spine, inability to reflect. It's not mirror, not emotion. Reflect. As if that is the true ailment and affliction of light. Then comes the day the birds fall. Hundreds of ibises, doves, and kites dead in the courtyards. Necks limp, wings brittle like leaves. The high record keeper notes it in his log, then dies mid-sentence. His final line ends in a glyph for soul never closed. They bury him in the courtyard in the shadow of Aten. But Aten casts no shadow. They bury him in light. The forbidden ritual, an apocryphal rite, emerges in the whispers of the sick. The turning of the face. To escape the Aten's gaze, the afflicted turn their beds northward and sleep with obsidian over their eyes. If the god cannot see you, he cannot take you. Some survive. Others simply vanish. The obscure event. A ceramic tablet recovered from a collapsed home near the royal district contains a single calendar page. The names of the days are scratched out. At the center is a drawing. A man with his back to the sun, surrounded by 12 eyeless figures. Low it scrawled in haste. He turned too soon, the unsolved mystery. To this day, no formal explanation exists for the abrupt depopulation of Akatadon. Records stop. Houses are left intact. Food still in pots. Letters unfinished. Some believe plague. Others suspect famine. But the signs do not match. The city was not destroyed. It was simply walked away from. You watch as another body is carried silently to the open field. No one mourns. No one sings. They place her down, palms up, face to the sun, and wait not for resurrection, but recognition. As if by displaying the corpse to Aten, they might earn reprieve, but nothing changes. The sun stares back. You retreat to a shadowed alcove. Close your eyes, and for the first time pray. But no words come. Not because you forget them, because there is no God left to hear them. Only light. Only heat. Only the quiet, endless hum of a presence that does not bless, but observes. He is small when it happens, no more than 9. His crown too large, his sandals too stiff. His name, once Tutankhaten, shifts like wind across sand. In a single proclamation, it becomes Tutankhamun ***. And with that change, the sun god begins to die. You are there the day the name is spoken aloud. It carries weight not because of the syllables, but because of what they replace. A god is cut from the boy's mouth like a tumor. The people do not cheer. They exhale. Quiet, collective release, as though they'd been holding their breath for years. As the new king is young, his regents speak for him. The shadowed vizier and Horemheb, the silent general, move quickly. Statues of Aten are left standing, but the offerings cease. The temples of Ammon, shuttered for decades, reopen not with ceremony but with urgency. The old gods rush in like floodwaters. You watch as a group of priests, faces wrinkled from exile, re-enter the sanctuary of Karnak. Their feet bleed on the floor that once rejected them. They carry with them relics smuggled out during the purge broken ankhs, hidden idols, sacred oils hidden in funerary jars. They do not weep. They grind the sun discs into dust. And in the heart of Akhenaten, rituals of forgetting begin. Stone carvers are sent to remove Akhenaten's name from walls, statues, even tombs. But when they chip away the cartouches, the pigment underneath is fresh, as though the name had only just been written. One carver flees in panic, shouting that the wall bled when he struck it. He does not return. You find a hidden chamber beneath the boy king's newly commissioned temple. It contains a shrine not to Aten but to Amen, Lord of Hiddenness. The chamber is lit with crushed malachite, and the walls bear a ritual of return, the god who waits beyond memory. The mouth sealed in light now opens in shadow. Let the eye that saw too much be closed forever. And in the center, an idol's eye, not a full statue, just the eye, encased in gold leaf, pierced through with obsidian. Not symbolic, sacrificial, or ritual wound. The forbidden ritual, the eye-bearing rite, was performed in absolute silence. A single relic, usually a sculpted eye, was pierced, sealed in resin, and buried beneath the foundation of a restored temple. Its purpose, to blind any god who watched through the old structures. The priests called it the Ritual of Eclipse, the obscure event. A letter discovered in the tomb of a high official named Pentu describes a sudden windstorm in Akhenaten after the boy king's renunciation of Aten. The sky turned copper. The sun darkened. It was not a storm, he writes, but a shriek. The god screamed as he fell from the sky. It's the unsolved mystery. Tutankhamun's tomb contains relics of Atenist Artsun discs, symmetrical altars, half-finished hymn inscriptions. Why were they placed there, alongside Amen's sacred items? Some believe it was a political compromise. Others suspect the boy never fully rejected the god, that some part of him, beneath the burial wrappings, still turned to the light. You witness the boy king's funeral rites. The prayers are old again, the incense thick and black. The mask gold, yes, but bearing both signs, the vulture of Nekhbet and the cobra of Wadjet. But on the underside of the mask's chin, nearly invisible, is a scratched glyph, Aten's disc, and beside it, a line from the forbidden hymn. Even when forgotten, I remain above. You turn your gaze from the tomb. The priests chant Amen's name. The people bow. The sun shines as before, but something feels hollow, like a pact broken too easily, like a silence that has not yet finished falling. And in the sky, the disk of Aten still glows. Smaller now, but not gone. Never gone, just waiting. They no longer say his name, not because it is forbidden, but because it fades from the mouth before the tongue can finish it. Even the scribes grow hesitant to write the disc, not from fear, but from a growing sense of futility. You begin to notice the absence not as silence, but as hollowing. In the palace walls once adorned with Aten's rays, the plaster flakes away. Not peeled, withheld. The paint refuses to adhere, and when new paint is applied, it cracks in strange patterns rings, spirals, blurred forms like distant stars. No icon of Aten has ever depicted him with a face, no eyes, no nose, no expression, only a circle, with rays and hands at the end, caressing, grasping, penetrating, a god who reaches. You follow a rumor of final priest, once belonging to the inner sanctum, now exiled to the desert beyond the boundary stele. He is called only the listener. They say he wanders the sand blindfolded, barefoot, whispering to someone just behind the sky. You find him near a collapsed monument, half buried in salt. He is thin, mouth cracked, eyes ruined. He speaks to you in whispers that don't match the movement of his lips. You seek the face, he says, but there never was one. Just direction, just focus. 18 is not a god who sees. 18 is a god who is seeing itself. You offer him water, he refuses. I must remain dry, he explains. If the sun touches water through me, I might reflect, and then he will return. Nothing. And yet everything in you tightens, continues. I saw him once, not with eyes, with absence. He does not speak in language, he speaks in pattern. He does not want worship, he wants orientation. We were never his children. We were his line of sight. You ask what he means, he does not answer, but he weeps dry tears. You notice something etched into the inside of his palm scarred there long ago. A circle with no center, not a sun, a hole. You leave him in the dusk, walking back toward what remains of Akedanon. The city is breaking now, not from rebellion or decay, but from erasure. Walls collapse without sound, streets vanish into dust, yet the sun shines on, always watching the forbidden ritual. There is a rite, whispered among the very last adherents, the ritual of the blank face. Practitioners cover every mirror, erase every name, burn every likeness of themselves. Then, naked and unnamed, they stand in sunlight for one full day without speaking. If they succeed, they forget their own face, forever. The obscure event, a carved fragment unearthed near the necropolis, shows a human figure kneeling before the Aten Disput. Instead of a human face, the figure has a polished oval of obsidian where the head should be. The caption beneath, still debated, reads, "He who bears the likeness of nothing, the unsolved mystery." The term atone eventually faded from temple records. No formal condemnation, no purge. It simply slipped away. Later dynasties ignored it. Scholars today argue, how could a god worshipped so intensely vanish so completely? Some suggest mass conspiracy, others psychological suppression, but perhaps the god wanted to vanish. You stare into a pool at dusk. The water does not ripple. You see your reflection, but it is not you. The face is smooth, featureless, not a dream, not a metaphor. Just a possibility you never allowed yourself to imagine. That this god did not fail. He simply reached the end of his observation, and then turned away. The desert does not hide things. It remembers where to forget them. It rides south, away from the dust-choked ruins of Akedanon, into the Badlands where ancient cliffs rise like the vertebrae of the gods themselves. The locals will not follow. They say the winds are wrong here. That if you sleep beneath the limestone face of the hills, you'll dream of faces that never had eyes. You find the first tomb by accident. Its entrance collapsed, sealed not by time but design. You pull away the stones, and a stale heat breathes out. Not decay, not rot. Something else. Like the exhale of a place that hasn't been touched by worship in centuries. Inside, the air is still. You descend with a flickering torch. The walls are blank. No prayers, no lineage. These smooth panels where inscriptions should be. Then, on the far wall, a single relief. Aten's disc not above the king, but consuming him. Rays not ending in hands, but in mouths. The mouths are open, screaming. And around the disc a ring of other gods, Thoth, Horus, scoliched as if mid-motion, recoiling, fleeing the central eye. But their features blur, melt, as if devoured by the very stone. You press deeper into narrow corridors sealed with lime. You find tablets burned into clay, not written. The text reads in reverse. It's not in content, but in flow. As if the entire tomb is meant to be read backward. And that is when you see it. It's an image buried beneath a collapsed ceiling tile. The Aten disc, swallowing smaller discs each with the symbol of another god. one by one, not war, not conquest. Absorption, erasure. The oldest gods are shown not as enemies, but as food. You reach the burial chamber. There is no sarcophagus, only ash. And in the center, the faint outline of a body once curled in the fetal position, a shadow on the stone. And beside it, painted in blood that has turned to rust. I remembered too much. The forbidden ritual, known only by fragments recovered from a single shattered ossuary. The scroll of negative life was a funerary reversal. Instead of preserving the soul for eternity, it guided it into forgetting. Each verse was designed to untether memory, lineage, and divinity. The final line simply read, "He shall not return, for he shall not recall." The obscure event? Excavators in the early 1900s uncovered a limestone coffin near Amarna with no body. No wrappings, only a single smooth skull. Elongated, polished, unblemished. No markings, no teeth. The team lead left a note before abandoning the site. It is not human, but it waited in the shape of one. It's the unsolved mystery. Despite records of numerous royal tombs built during Akhenaten's reign, only one has been confirmed. All others are either missing, misattributed, or lead to chambers with no names. It is as if the entire dynasty was not buried, but evaporated from historical continuity. You sit in the burial chamber, the torch low. The heat grows unbearable, but it's not from the sun. It radiates from the wall. You place your hand there and feel breath, as if the tomb itself is alive. As if something behind the stone still remembers the name you thought was forgotten. You leave quickly, climbing back into the starlit air, but the stars feel wrong, too still, too few. And in the silence between them, you feel watched, not by eyes, by memory. Because the Aten does not need temples. He does not need names. He only needs to be not unremembered. And in your breath, in your footsteps, in the oil smoke clinging to your clothes, he endures. There is a name buried deeper than any tomb. Not Akhenaten, not Aten, a word without vowels, with no god form, no myth, no offering. A word that scholars skip. It's not out of superstition, at least not the kind written in ink but out of unease. You find it carved on the wall behind a sealed tomb with no occupant. The hieroglyphs surrounding it are clean, standard the liturgy of mourning, the lines of praise. But in the final panel, scratched not with chisel but with fingernail, lies the anomaly. A symbol, one no catalog fully explains. It is a double circle, one thin, one thick, tersected not by a line, but by a gap. Like a sentence left unfinished, like a scream interrupted. You trace your finger across it, and a wave of nausea grips your ribs, because the symbol moves, not in the stone, in your mind.
Yes.
As though it rearranges thought before it becomes language, a cursed consonant, a forbidden phoneme, not merely a name that should not be spoken, but a sound that undoes structure. You stagger away, breath shaking, then you remember the letter. A half-decayed scrap found in a priest's satchel, long buried near the boundary stela of Akhenaten. The author had been silenced by decree, his writings banned, but one line remained legible. There is a name that was not meant to be spoken because the mouth becomes wrong when it tries. You seek out what remains of the scribe's hall. Most of it has collapsed, but one archivist remains. Old, blind, silent. You show him the symbol.
8.
He smiles faintly, not kindly, but knowingly. Then he writes a single line on a wax tablet. If you say it, he remembers you. The glyph, he gestures, was carved only once in the private chamber of Akhenaten's top priest, a room stripped of all light. No sun ever touched it, only reflection. The walls were lined in polished bronze, warped and indirect. There, the word was chanted once a year, never heard by others. Its purpose, to anchor the god, because the Aten, for all his light, is not fixed. He is concept, he is lens, he's a kind of watching that needs to be held in place, or else he wanders. The forbidden ritual. The naming of the blank was performed by only one, the high priest of light. To utter the word, he would fast for 13 days, blindfolded, bathed only in smoke from burning sand. Then, at the precise moment of the solstice, he would pronounce the name knot into the air, but into a reflective pool of mercury. It is said that the pool would boil and the god would stop moving for a year. The obscure event. A faded wall mural found in a quarry near the Nile shows a single figure, mouth open, with Aten's rays pouring into him rather than out. His head fractures in 3 places. Beneath the image is the phrase, "He said the name aloud." The horizon cracked. The unsolved mystery. No surviving text explains the true etymology of the word Aten. Some linguists argue it means the disk. Others suggest it predates the sun itself. One theory, dismissed by academia, claims it is not Egyptian at all, but imported. A word from before language, before myth, before division of the divine. You stand before the wall again. The scratched glyph seems brighter than before, like sunlight filtered through teeth. You want to say it? Your mouth aches to shape it, but your voice fails. Not out of fear, out of design. Sound has no breath, no pressure, no friction. It exists only in silence bent inward. You back away. But the word remains behind your eyes, not spoken, not remembered. Just waiting. You are alone now. Not in the physical sense, the city still moves. The wind still hisses across the white stones. In spirit, in thought, in what remains of devotion. You are the only one left who remembers. Ekataton has become a husk, shell of itself. The houses are empty, the roads are clean, too clean, as if footsteps are forbidden. The temples remain, but their altars bear no offerings. The prayers are shorter, not just a motion of the hands, a tilt of the head, a nod toward the sky. No words, only compliance. And the sun still shines, but the warmth is gone. What falls from the sky now is not heat, but attention dry, sterile, unblinking. You walk among buildings that cast no shade, and yet you are cold. The light touches nothing, it passes through. You visit the central court one last time. The stone is bleached near white. The disk above is perfect as ever golden, pulsing, unmoving. You raise your hand, your shadow lags behind. Not a trick of the sun, a refusal, as if even your outline resists participating now. And then it happens. The final moment. You do not see it but know it. The shift is not visual, it is in the air. A sudden drop in resistance, as though the pressure of being watched stops. You look up. The sun is still there, but something has turned away. The disk has not moved, but the focus is gone. You kneel, not in reverence, in recognition. Understand now why the god failed. Not because his doctrine was false, not because his people rejected him, but because he never looked back. Aten, once so present, so dominating, was not a god of relationship. He did not answer. He did not bless. He simply was. And now he is not. The light remains, but the presence within it has passed. No one sings anymore. The void court has vanished. The glyphs no longer burn. Even the forbidden hymn lies flat, meaningless, just words again. A god undone, not by destruction, but by withdrawal. The forbidden ritual. In the final year of Akhenaten's memory, a rite known only in fragments, the extinguishing was conducted by a dying priest. He stood naked in the sun at high noon and turned his back. No chant, no curse, only rejection. They say his body disappeared in a single instant, not consumed, not burned, but overwritten. The obscure event. A Nubian merchant, long after the city was abandoned, passed through the ruins and reported seeing his reflection on the ground at night, cast by no torch, no moon, no flame. A day later, his reflection was found lying on the plaza stones, but his body was never seen again. The unsolved mystery. Atenism left behind no coherent theology. No priesthood persisted. No followers fled to other lands, simply ceased. The only surviving traces are hymns with missing verses, temples built to vanish, and a god who required too much and returned to little. You rise from the plaza. The sun begins to set, but something is missing, not the light, its weight. The god is left. No fire, no plague, no scream, just absence. And in that absence, a question. Not who was Aten, but what was observing through him. A thing that needed no name, no followers, in line of sight. You leave Akhenaten behind, walking into the desert with the wind at your back. The sand rises, the sky cools, and somewhere behind you, the disk still hangs. But the eye is closed. The desert takes you, not in body, in story. You become another shape erased by sun. A curve worn out of the dunes, a whisper no longer repeated. But in quiet hours, beneath certain skies, wanderers still claim to see a brightness that outlasts night, a light with no source. Atan? No, not anymore. Only what remains when observation becomes memory and memory becomes silence. A silence that still watches. A silence that remembers your shape, your shadow, your hesitation. A silence shaped like a god, or a god shaped like forgetting.